What's going on, guys? And today I'm going to be talking about the NBA draft lottery that happened yesterday and who I think these teams should pick or will pick or whatever. Anyways, so yesterday the lottery was extremely boring as it was exactly as it should have been, which is really funny to think about that. It was boring because it was exactly how it was predicted in terms of no teams moved at all, where no teams jumped anyone else, because that could have been really interesting with all the pick swaps and protections, where if two people jumped the Lakers, the Sixers would have gotten their pick. And there's a lot of other things like the Kings, if they fell to a certain range, they would lose their pick to the Bulls. But regardless, I'm be talking about these teams. The order, I really don't have any game clips I can throw up there for the background, so I put up a little graphic I made myself of all the teams in order, and I'm gonna be talking about who I think each team should pick. And I gotta say, when I was looking at who I was choosing, it was really similar to NBADraft.net, one of the websites I actually used to look at draft prospects and players and stuff. I use this in Draft Express almost exclusively, sometimes use the actual NBA's website to look at that. But for the most part, I look at these two, and mine was very similar to NBADraft.net. Draft Express, I was pretty different besides the top two picks where everyone agrees upon. But a little bit later on, towards the end of the lottery, it starts to switch around. Regardless, let's get started. First, with the Philadelphia 76ers, I feel like they should pick Ben Simmons, number 1 overall. There are many reasons why, as he is probably the most talented player. He's not as good of a shooter as Brandon Ingram, but he does have a lot of things that Brandon Ingram can't do, such as great rebounding skills, where Ingram averaged, I believe, about 6.5 rebounds a game, while Ben Simmons averaged close to 12. He isn't as great of a defender, but he did average, I believe, close to 2 steals per game. He's a really good distributor. I think he averaged 5 assists per game, and he was a pretty decent scorer as well, even though he can't shoot the 3 ball. I think another reason why they would pick him is just to screw over the Lakers, because Philadelphia, at least during the Sam Hinkie era, liked to mess with other teams so that they could get the upper hand, where the other teams would have to come to them to get what they want. And the Lakers have come out, I believe, pretty recently and said that they wanted Ben Simmons, and it's pretty obvious they would as well. So I feel like that's their best option for them, is for them to pick Ben Simmons number 1 overall because of his great potential and the fact that they can screw over the Lakers. I really like Ben Simmons as a player. I feel like he can be really, really good in the league. Some people might say he might not be super talented, he can end up like Lamar Odom, but Lamar Odom was still a very, very good player. Should have been an all-star at least once or twice. And I think he can be better than that, especially if he develops an outside jump shot. Now moving to number 2, I think Brandon Ingram will go to the Los Angeles Lakers, and this is solely because he is the best player available. And on the Lakers, what they're really, really struggling with is they don't have a small forward for the future at all. With Kobe retiring, the only small forward really on their roster who they can play is Nick Young, and he's as good as gone right now after the whole fiasco going on with D'Angelo Russell. Of course, they really don't have a great center, or they have Roy Hibbert currently positioned there. However, they do have younger guys at the other positions with Julius Randle, Jordan Clarkson, and D'Angelo Russell, as I mentioned earlier. So I think Brandon Ingram would be a great pick right here. A good outside shooter, a decent defender, and an all-around decent scorer. A lot of people compare him to Kevin Durant, and I think that might be a little high. However, he does have all the little things that Durant does. Good shooter, long, lanky, and yeah. And if you ever saw a picture of him, I know J.E. Skeets tweeted out a picture of him yesterday. That guy is really skinny, like ridiculous. He needs to put on some weight, but regardless, he is a very good player at that spot. Now moving to number 3, the Boston Celtics. And first things first, I think Boston will and should trade this pick, as they kept this pick mainly for the hope that it'd go number 1 overall. Maybe they'd be able to develop Ben Simmons a little bit and make him a superstar up in Boston. However, when it slipped to 3, I think if they weren't going to get Ben Simmons, they're going to trade away this pick. However, if they're going to keep it, I would give this pick to Buddy Hield, or I'd say they'd pick Buddy Hield, as he's the best player available at this point. Other websites are saying Dragon Bender or Chris Dunn at this spot, a lot of those kind of guys, but I feel Buddy Hield is the best guy available. A great scorer, and even though Oklahoma kind of collapsed in their final game against, I believe it was Villanova, he's still a very, very talented player who I think can do a lot in the league. He's a pretty good scorer. I believe he averaged 25 a game, which I don't know if it led the nation or not, but he was a really good outside shooter as well. and that's the one thing that Boston really struggles with is their scoring, and they really need a rim protector, but at this spot there's really no big rim protector, so I think they should get Buddy Hield at this spot or trade away their pick. Now moving on to the Phoenix Suns at number 4. I said that they would get Dragon Bender. The reason why I said this is at point guard and shooting guard, I feel like they're set for quite a while with Eric Bledsoe and Brandon Knight. Not Brandon Knight, my bad. Devin Booker. I mean, Brandon Knight can come off the bench, but most likely they should get rid of him, as he is not really a great player to have on their team. He's alright, but nothing super special. And they really need a small forward, power forward, or center, as they recently traded away Markieff Morris, as it really didn't work out for him. And they really can use one of those guys at one of those 3 positions. And I feel like the best guy available was Dragon Bender. I don't know too much about him, as I don't know a lot about many international prospects. However, a lot of people are really high on him in terms of him being a typical European big man, do-it-all big guy. And I feel like he'd fit really well next to Tyson Chandler or Alex Len for the future. In terms of, actually, my bad, at small forward they have TJ Warren, who I like a lot. So I feel like he would fit very well, Dragon Bender, being able to spread the floor a little bit, and overall be a pretty good contributor to the Phoenix Suns. Now moving on to the 5th pick with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Similar to Boston, I feel like they should trade this pick as well. One that I hear a lot, or at least pretty common, is they should trade this to the Thunder for Serge Ibaka, as that might be one of their only weaknesses is the power forward position, as they have Georgie Jang playing there, who isn't a bad player in the least or at all. The thing is, he's not really a great power forward. He's better coming off the bench, I feel like, backing up Karl Anthony Towns. However, if they keep this pick, I feel like the best pick for them is Jamal Murray, and currently I'm going exactly as NBADraft.net is saying. And the reason why I say that he's the best option is another thing that they struggle with is having shooting from the outside. Their best 3-point shooter right now might be Zach LaVine. I'm not positive. Maybe Shabazz Muhammad is up there as well. But in terms of Rubio and Andrew Wiggins, those guys are not shooters at all. And having a good guard shooter and Jamal Murray, which this website, I believe they compare him to Jeff Hornacek back. He played in the 90s, I believe, with the Utah Jazz and Phoenix Suns. I feel like that would be really good for them, as he scored, I believe, 20 a game, and he was a 40% shooter from deep in college, and he would fit really well where you come off the bench, hit some shots. I can see him as being kind of like a Kevin Martin type, which they actually had, but he was just too old for this team to develop with them, and so I feel like he'd be very special on this team. Now moving on to the number 6 pick, and I said that, my bad, the New Orleans Pelicans should choose Chris Dunn. Now, the Pelicans can go a lot of ways in this draft. They could trade this pick away to get an established player, but the thing that they have that's the most important to them is they have an established power forward or center in Anthony Davis, and they really need to build around him. They do have Drew Holiday, but he gets injured way too often, so I feel like the best option for them is to get a replacement player there, and then they can maybe get a big man to work with Anthony Davis pretty well. But at this pick, there's no one really great to work around with Anthony Davis. A little bit later on, there's some big men that work with that might be able to, but it's not worth it to pick at number 6. So I think Chris Dunn would be a great guy to have, a really good defender and a decent ball distributor, and I feel like he'd work really well with Anthony Davis. So that's who I feel like they should pick. Moving on to number 7 with the Denver Nuggets. This is a really tough pick as well, as the Nuggets are pretty deep at pretty set at almost every position. At point guard, they have a Moutier. Shooting guard is where they're a little bit weak, where they have Gary Harris, yet they still have Gallinari and Wilson Chandler, who can play shooting guard or small forward. And power forward is Kenneth Reed, and center they have Jokic and some other international big guys like Joffrey Levine, and I forgot who I feel so bad. Oh my god, who's that big white dude that they had? I'll look it up in the meantime. However, I feel like the Nuggets, the one thing that they might be struggling with is the shooting guard position. And the one thing that they can fix there is by picking the guy from California, Jaylen Brown. Now, Jaylen Brown has a lot of weaknesses to his game. He's not really a great shooter, and I feel like he's not really ready too much in terms of, Jusuf Nurkic, that's who I was thinking about, my bad. And also, they do have Will Barton, who's pretty good off the bench, but I feel like Jaylen Brown can be pretty good for the league, as he has a pretty developed body in terms of having an NBA-ready body. However, he's not a great shooter, and I feel like he's not 100% NBA-ready. However, he can develop pretty well, play the swing position, and do whatever Denver Nuggets need. I feel like he can be a pretty good defender, and he'd fit really well in the up and down pace of the Denver Nuggets that they usually play at. So that's who I feel like Denver should pick. It's tough for them, I really don't know, but that's who I say regardless. Now moving on to the number 8 pick with the Sacramento Kings, and then I feel like they should pick the one and only Jakob Poeltl. Now, Jakob Poeltl I like a lot. If I was the Celtics, I would trade down to get him, as I feel like he can be a really, really good player, just like Andrew Bogut was, who actually came from Utah as well, except 11 years ago. He's a pretty good rim protector, decently athletic. He's not a huge leaper, but he can get up and down the court pretty well. He's a good inside scorer. I feel like he'd fit really well next to DeMarcus Cousins if they want to keep DeMarcus. Really, the only thing that the Kings are struggling with is the shooting guard position. But with Jaylen Brown gone, there's really no great shooting guards or good shooting guards available until the mid-20s. So I think that they should pick Jakob Poeltl here, as he'd fit really well next to DeMarcus Cousins. He'll be able to get a lot of rebounds. He's a pretty good defender as well, something that is not so good about DeMarcus's game. Regardless, this is who I feel like they should pick, and it'd work really well next to him. Also, this is where it's starting to deviate from the NBA Draft.net, at least in my opinion. As the first 7, I had the exact same picks, but from now on, I believe all of them are completely different. Moving to number 9, with the Toronto Raptors, I said they should pick Domantas Sabonis. And Domantas Sabonis is the son of former NBA player Arvydas Sabonis. I did a video on him in terms of his card in a Budget Ballers episode, and if you're watching this for the NBA content, you probably don't care about that, but regardless, Sabonis fits really well in Toronto, I feel like, as he can play power forward or center. And even though he's not a good defender, he's a really, really big guy who can get a lot of rebounds for the team, and he's a pretty good scorer. And that's the one thing that Toronto struggles with, is their power forward position. Currently, I believe they have Luis Scola and Patrick Patterson sharing the minutes. I'm not a huge Toronto fan, but I think that this guy right here would be able to solidify their starting 5, especially if DeMar DeRozan stays, and they'd be really good for a while. I like Sabonis a lot. Very, very good rebounder and pretty good inside scorer, and has a decent mid-range touch, so I feel like he would fit very well in that position. Now moving on to the 10th pick by the Milwaukee Bucks. This is tough for them as well, as I feel like they really need a point guard or a center, and in my personal opinion, alright, my bad about that. I just kept on getting a lot of phone calls from some spam messengers, and I don't know why the hell they call so often, but anyways, going back to it, the Milwaukee Bucks, I said they should get either a point guard or a center because of the fact that they are set from the 2 to 4 position with Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Jabari Parker. However, a point guard with Michael Carter-Williams and at center with Greg Monroe, neither are really great fits for the long term, as they really need 3-point shooting or rim protection, and neither provide either. So therefore, I feel like they should go with Marquise Chris. Actually, my bad. I was looking at the wrong guy. They should actually go with Deontay Davis. Now, I don't know too much about Deontay Davis, but I was looking him up, and he looks like a pretty solid prospect to have coming out of Michigan State. He's a 6'10 power forward center. I don't know that much about him, as I said earlier. However, I was looking up his stats, and I felt like he would fit pretty well. He's good size, and he'd fit really well with the rest of this team. He's also a very, very young guy. He's a freshman, and during his freshman year, he averaged almost 2 blocks per game in only 18 minutes, which is a good sign for his rim protection potential. So that's who I feel like they should pick. Now moving on to moving on to the next pick with the Orlando Magic. The Magic is another tough choice, as they really have a lot of players already on their team that are pretty special players in terms of almost anyone in their starting lineup. Of course, small forward is their one weakness, I feel like, after they trade Tobias Harris, where they have Elfrid Payton, Victor Oladipo, Aaron Gordon, and of course Nikola Vucevic. However, they can upgrade at any of these positions, and off the bench are not too strong, so I'm going to give them the pick in Furkan Korkmaz. Now, I don't know too much about Furkan Korkmaz, or I don't think I'm even pronouncing that right. However, looking him up, he's a pretty athletic scorer. He's 6'7", 175 at the shooting guard position, which is pretty slim for his weight. However, I feel like he can fit pretty well in the Orlando Magic in terms of what they want to play like. I don't know exactly what they play like. However, they did pick Mario Hezonja last year, so they're looking towards those athletic 3-and-D guys, and I feel like he can do that pretty well, or fit that need pretty well. And overall, I don't know exactly what they want to do with this pick, but that's the best guy available in terms of what they need. Of course, they could get a really, really good center, but there's no one really available at this point, so they might trade this pick. I don't know if they will, but I think Furkan Korkmaz is one of the better options at this point. Now moving on to the number 12 pick with the Utah Jazz. I feel like the most likely they should trade this pick for a point guard. However, if they keep this pick, I feel like the best option for them is Denzel Valentine. Valentine was one of the better players in college this year, where early on he averaged close to a triple-double. And he's a really good playmaker, something that the Jazz really need. As a point guard, they're playing with freaking Shelvin Mack, who I thought wouldn't even do anything over there. He did a lot better than expected, but they can't really rely on Shelvin Mack for the long term. So if they can't get a point guard out of this pick, I think Denzel Valentine is a solid guy who can come off the bench and help with the playmaking alongside Gordon Hayward and Rodney Hood. So I think he'd be a decent pick for them, but most likely they would end up needing to trade it. Now going to the 13th pick by the Phoenix Suns. This is where I messed up. I said Marquise Chris should be picked at this spot. Now, I don't know too much about Marquise Chris either. However, he does have pretty decent size, especially for a freshman at 6'9", 230 about. And just like the other guy mentioned, Deontay Davis, he does get a lot of blocks, or a decent amount of blocks, where his freshman year in 25 minutes a game, he averaged 14, 5, and almost 2 blocks a game, which is very good. And once again, I don't know much to say about him, but I feel like he fits pretty well for Phoenix. At this point, they might trade this pick, as they do have, I believe, 3 first-round picks this year, or yes, they do have 3, with 1 in the very late first round. So they can't really have all these guys. So they might trade away, but if they don't, I feel like that Marquise Chris would fit well with them. Now moving on to the 14th pick with the Chicago Bulls. And at this pick, I really don't think they should keep it as well. As the fact is, they haven't been playing too well, but ideally what they really need is a backup point guard or a center for the future. As the fact that Derrick Rose, we don't know how good he'll be in the next 5 years or so. So maybe get a young point guard who they can develop with Derrick Rose and eventually shift the position to the young point guard instead. But there's really no really good point guards available. It seems to be upcoming around this pick. And in terms of the centers, there's no real great centers either around this spot. The only guy who could be considered a center around this spot is Henry Ellison from Marquette, but he's a big white dude who they compared to on NBADraft.net to Brian Cardinal, I believe. And holy shit, you don't want a Brian Cardinal that and your lottery pick we can trade away for much more valuable things. Regardless, I feel like he'd be a good pick at this spot in terms of a good. I didn't even say who it was. At this pick, I would choose Bryce Johnson if they keep it. I chose Bryce Johnson as he's an incredible rebounder and not even a great defender, but he's a pretty serviceable, defender, and overall a decent player at this pick. I liked him a lot. I kind of wish North Carolina won because of him. And overall, a really good guy who can fit into almost any system, and if anything, he can fit well over there. He seems a little redundant with some of their big men. Regardless, he's able to really help out this team, and I feel like he should get picked at this spot by the Chicago Bulls if they don't want to trade it. Anyways, guys, that was my predictions for the 2016 NBA draft in terms of lottery picks. I might do a full draft or a full first round predictions later on, but that's who I thought for the lottery picks. My opinion on the lottery, which was exactly how it happened, so I really can't comment too much about it. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Of course, please give me a thumbs up if you watched this far, if you enjoyed it. Comment down below who you think each team should pick at each spot. Subscribe for more 2K content and NBA content. Share with your friends and talk about it wherever. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good day.